and Hagmann report for today. It is the 12th day of September 2014. It's a Friday. This is a live broadcast. I'm Doug Hagmann in studio with my son, fellow investigator, researcher Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Folks, I want to thank you very much for choosing to deliberately join us, deliberately listen to our program. We know that you could invest your 3 hours of time listening to someone else, some other shows. I want to thank you very much for choosing ours to listen to. Folks, our home base on the internet is Homeland Security U.S. Our new base on the internet is HagmanandHagmann.com. We still have files at HomelandSecurityUS.com that is still active. In fact, all of our archive files are there. There you can find the entirety of our work on Benghazi and other matters that will be coming up, making news headlines here in the near future. But for new listeners, folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And, of course, on Saturdays we have the Weekend Report with the Weekend Vigilante, Sheila Zielinski, a glove fit for our show. She's a great researcher, a tenacious researcher, great talk show host, and just a wonderful Christian woman, and we welcome the addition with her. As a matter of fact, if we can twist her arm into it while we are away at the end of the month for a couple of days, hopefully we can get her to guest host. Having said that, folks, we've got a great show for you planned, an amazing 3 hours as we look through this fog of misinformation given to you by the media, the disinformation, of course, given to you by the media. And I'll just say this: there's so much to talk about. It's almost difficult, really, to perform news triage or triage on the news, as one would come upon a mass casualty type of an event. You do triage on patients. Well, the entire world is like a mass casualty event at the moment. So to triage what's important, what we need to know, the normal person, the everyday person, that means you and I, unless, of course, you're walking around with, a couple of $1 billion worth of assets, or million even, I'll even go 5 figures, 6 figures. You're just the average Joe, I suppose, or the average Doug, depending on who you're talking to. This show is for you. Tonight, as the program unfolds, the first hour, we're going to cover some important points in news and certain things that I think are important to that Joe's done some research on, and of course I've done some research on. The second hour, we're going to have an interview with a very special author, Maria Canise, and it's about a book that she wrote, folks. It's a book that will come. In fact, you need to grab a hold of a copy. It's going to come in handy. I've read it. I've got a copy right here. If I didn't, it's right here. I can't. There's no camera to show it to. And it's a fantastic book. And then in the third hour, we'll be taking your calls any direction you want to go in this follow-up Friday. Joe, welcome to the studio tonight.
Glad to be here. We do have a lot of news to get into, and looking forward to hour number 2. With Maria. She's been on once before, I believe, at least once before, and has written some very important and topical books, self-published books, and others that are spiritual in nature, that are for the times that we live in. So it's going to be a great show, and also looking forward to hearing from our audience, as we have a number of news stories today that cover the spectrum from Ebola to our new war on terrorism to pretty much anything you wanted to cover. So I'm going to give it back to you, let you start where you want, and we can go from there.
Well, I think, folks, the one thing that I'm very concerned about, and looking at this, and you're not going to find this in the news necessarily or headlining the news, but I do believe that we are at the precipice of some pretty severe economic troubles. Now, for example, let me just say this. You go to the Drudge Report, or other websites, news aggregation type sites. What is trending right now, of course, mystery virus spreads to New York. Of course, this is important. But what are we not seeing? What is the issue that the issue that looms large and perhaps one of the most threatening aspects to our existence, at least our existence as we know it? And folks, please don't get tired of me talking about this, because this is so important for all of us. It really is. I believe this to be the case. What is extremely important is the economic impact that we need to be bracing for. We are about to get hit with a large, well, the U.S. dollar is about to be killed off. And, it was interesting last night. We had an open show last night on the anniversary of 9/11, and a caller talked about the conspiracy of the Chinese gold taken by the United States. Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
have you seen the price of metals lately?
Actually, no. I mean, my vast holdings in the metals, I probably should keep a better eye on them. What are they?
Well, I'm pulling them up now, but when I checked last time, I'm sure they're not too much different from that.
And by the way, I'm kidding on the vast holdings.
Yeah. We have gold is at $1,229, and silver is at $18.66. $18.66 an ounce. That's probably the lowest I've seen it since its rise to $50.
Well, my answer to that, folks, is if it was a good buy at 40, and people have bought at 40. I remember my father-in-law purchasing, I think it was $38 or $40 per ounce. I'll have to double check, and I know that my father-in-law paid a lot of money, and of course he's up in years, and he understands that it's a preservation of wealth. It's not necessarily an investment that you buy on a Tuesday, sell on a Friday, or you buy on a Monday, sell on a Friday, or whatever. We're going to see the price of gold, and if you listen to V in silver, if you listen to V, the guerrilla economist, he believes that the silver should be valued at U.S. dollars, current U.S. dollars, at somewhere between $400 and $500. And I tend to agree with him for a number of reasons, but there are a few things here I want to get into about this, because I do believe what we're heading for, and this will be the precursor for for everything, is the collapse of the U.S. dollar. And I had mentioned earlier, moments ago, the conspiracy of the Chinese gold taken by the U.S., how that, from a caller, how this all fits in with what we're talking about today, how plans laid well over a century ago, or 50 to 35 years ago, depending on which era you want to focus upon, how all of these are leading up to a certain layer of convergence that we're seeing today. Remember, folks, when our intelligence insider W was on with V, and you can find this on our archives, on our archive page at hagmanandhagmann.com under past shows, and you can also find this as well on SoundCloud. But W was talking about something called the Silver Code, meaning that this is an insider's type of code telling people to get into the game, and and the prices are actually the value is being lowered of the values, so the insiders can actually get into the physical purchase or the physical acquisition of the metals. Now, having said that, when I was speaking with the intelligence insider earlier, and let me see if I can find this here, he had mentioned something, and this blew kind of by me, and I had some numbers incorrect. But did you know that there was an earthquake at the Lake Tahoe region yesterday?
Let me pull up
Did you hear about
USGS. Let me look at
All right.
USGS. All
right. Well, the bottom line here is we're looking at a rare earthquake of about a 3.3, 33 or 3.5, depending on who you ask, earthquake located under the predominantly dormant Mount Pluto volcano. Okay? Now, what's interesting about this is some of the names of areas of things around Mount Pluto, such as Dollar Point, the Dollar Reservoir. Pluto, by the way, the name of Pluto means wealth. It's an alternative name for Hades, the god of the underworld. And in fact, the earthquake epicenter is very close to forming an isosceles triangle with the top of Mount Pluto and the Dollar Reservoir. Now, what I just say and why is this important? Well, let me tell you, folks. Could this mean that could this be some sort of a insider's insider kind of signal or sign that the dollar is about to be shaken? Well, of course not. You know, earthquakes, those are not man-made. Everyone knows that, and you can't fake earthquakes, or not fake them. You can't cause them deliberately. Everyone knows that. I mean, just
that's not
living.
True.
If you're well, no. I mean, if you haven't taken the red or blue or whatever pill, you know.
There was an article. I don't even think we covered it, but it talked about the difference between man-made earthquakes and natural earthquakes, and how they're the difference in the damage and the shaking is much less damage, much less shaking for man-made earthquakes rather than natural earthquakes. And I'll find that in here because I do archive all the articles we go through.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm saying is the fact that yes, I mean, you know, there is a situation, or there is earthquakes can be man-made, of course, and it's just rather interesting that this happened at Mount Pluto. Pluto meaning wealth. Does this in fact pretend something happening with the dollar? When you put all of this information together, I think it's important to note. So, you know, what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think? This is something that I'm keeping my eye on in terms of the wealth, the issue of our wealth. And look, go back through the Chinese conspiracy, the Chinese gold taken by the U.S., combine that with the dollar or the gold repatriation to the Germans that never happened, and combine all of that with the World Trade Center attacks of 2001, where the Cantor Fitzgerald Securities Services was hit, and the gold that was secure in the underground facilities at the World Trade Center is missing. No one knows where it went. Now, there are some theories that have emerged on different websites. However, the evidence is pretty skimpy. But I said all of that to say this. I think what we're seeing here is the convergence of confluence of different things taking place that are consistent with this, and I'll say alleged, because that's what it is right now, this alleged silver code that W talked about. And folks, if you don't know what I'm referring to, go back and listen to the episode with W. I think it was on May 2nd. He might have mentioned it initially. If not, it was certainly with W and V, and that's on our archives. But the bottom line is, I think what we're about to see is the economy being hit very, very hard. Now, what will cause the economy being hit? We all know that it was Kyle Bass in 2011 that interviewed, we believe it to be Timothy Geithner. Of course, we don't know exactly who it was. It was a highly placed government official. And how high, you know, I mean, head of the or Secretary of the Treasury, that's a pretty high government official. So his response was killing off of the dollar, or his intent was or he was saying that they were going to kill off the dollar. So that would cause, of course, a massive shift of wealth, depopulation, through starvation, absolutely. Especially hitting hard, especially the third world countries, followed next by the middle class of the West, including and especially the United States and Canada. So I think that, you know, when people are looking, they're looking for these atomic bombs to go off, or looking for an EMP. Folks, that very well might happen, but the more I study the different things that are taking place across the world, the more I study and research the current activities of the renegade in chief and his merry band of renegades, I really believe that we are going to be softened up in such a way that we're not going to be able to fight back from whatever that the kill shot might be. And how we're going to be softened up is through the softening up of the economy. And the reason I mentioned the conspiracy of the Chinese gold also is because that does play into, right now it currently plays into, and folks, I'll just expand on this a little bit more. This plays into the two Japanese businessmen who were picked up as they crossed the border from Italy to Switzerland. See, folks, if you heard that ring in the background, that's our bat phone. And I did ask W I said, come on, and I want you to come on the air and talk about a few things. And I knew that if I got it just a little bit wrong or screwed it up, that he'd be able to come on and set me straight.
Kind of like how I do the dishes at home and don't do them properly, so the wife has to, just don't do the dishes.
Exactly.
You don't do them right.
Exactly. And I'm serious about this. I did say, look, come on. And he said, no, I really don't want to come on. He said, I don't want to dominate anything. I said, no, you're not going to dominate. Come on, because I need you to explain some things. And he said, no. So, and I said, well, just listen. So I think I screwed it up sufficient. Oh, I shouldn't say screwed it up. I think I left enough holes for him to plug sufficiently. And W, you laugh, but I did this intentionally. There you are. The bat signal went up. So take it, brother.
Well, the only thing I wanted to throw in there is that remember what is the core aspect of the 9/11 attacks when you get right down to it. To most people, we focus on the terrorism of the event and that it changed the way that we handle security internally here in our country and across the world, and it was a pretense for military action and involvement across the world. But go back to the alleged statements by bin Laden or whoever was managing bin Laden, and what was the objective both the first and the second time that the trade centers were attacked? What were they representative of? They were representative of the centers of finance and economy, world trade centers.
Yep.
So what were they really targeting with those locations? What do they represent to the whole world? They represent and of course symbology is huge. It's monstrous in the way these players are gaming us. So they were after the economy. Ultimately, even with the airlines and not being able to efficiently get on the aircraft, go someplace, do business, come back, to safely travel, and what's America about? The business of America is business. If you make it so we can't do business smoothly, efficiently, then you damage our economy. And ultimately, what was the statement that were being made about what the logic of bin Laden was in going after us was to make it difficult for us to be economically sound, viable, in order to go cause problems for their jihadist movements across the world. So if our economy collapsed, we would be able to give them trouble wherever they were at. And that was their way of getting revenge. So now you move forward to today, yesterday, the present. If there was going, and Veal verify this, I said this weeks ago when he was asking me if I thought there was going to be anything happen on 9/11. I said, well, I mean, who knows, anything can happen, but I'm not looking for the next event to be airplanes hitting buildings or, shopping centers blow up or schools being attacked and things like that. That's not at all what I'm looking for. Because what was the original objective from the outset? It was the economy. And ultimately, the economy has been severely damaged. What's the next thing coming? It's the coup de grace. And so even hidden things impacting our economy at this point that may take us the rest of the way, that's the big deal, and take us over the top. So even little events, remember, let me just say that coming from a slightly different event that your viewers uniquely may remember. When you go to the headwaters of the Mississippi, it starts out as a little stream trickling out of a natural spring all the way out in the Dakotas. When you go to the Garden of Eden example that he was using, with the waters gushing forth from this fountain below in the earth, and you say, well, there's a lot of water there, but it's not enough to make these 4 great rivers that, water the whole earth. Well, no. What it is, it's a catch basin. It starts there, and then all of the other stuff that comes from the mountainsides and everything else, the water flows into those areas. Well, what's with the Mississippi? It starts with this one point, and as water flows down, it gets added onto and added onto and added onto by all the waters in that vast Midwest flowing to one central river and down that river to the sea. And so on this 9/11 event, now, this final turn in this critical year ahead, that final turn now may very well have already started with events that even happened in the last several hours. We may not even realize fully some of what has just occurred. Remember, we've announced we're going to go in and start raising Cain, if you will, with ISIS, including bombing locations, ISIS locations inside Syria, and we're working at those target sites, etc. What may seem just a trickle now, we may look back months from now or a year from now and say this monstrous river all started right there. That was the headwaters of everything. And there is other, believe me, I've been talking with other guys behind the scenes. The code is very complex, but there's been a number of things that have come up even in the last few days, and we're going, oh my gosh, there it is. And kind of reconfirming even more so that we're exactly on schedule and on target. It's very big. This is a very serious thing. People need to be aware we got time, but this builds throughout the remainder of this year and all of next year into the fall, and we're at that turn point now. And I think that again, it may look like a trickle this moment, but we're there. It's gaining momentum, and we'll be filling those catch basins all the way to the ocean now.
Very well said, and I like that raising Cain remark. I think that you slipped that in there very nicely. So we're not wrong right now when we're saying that the economy is perhaps one of the most lethal threats against our country that we could be faced with. Is that a
well? I think that was ultimately the target to begin with. It was always
right.
the target. Remember, if you're going to create a new world order, and out of chaos comes the order, Well, what do you got to do if you're going to create a new world order? You got to, grind everything up and pummel it and make it back into a lump of clay again. That's the view these people have. They are reordering the world. They're pulling the world like dough, like clay, into a lump, and they're kneading it, and they're grinding it, and they're sifting in some of their fluids that they want, if you will, to make it easier to work with, a little water here and there. But they're kneading the world so that they can reform it into something of their design, of their unique design. There's a lot of things going on here that people just don't even realize the full significance of what's happening this moment economically. Those events where these couriers have been intercepted with very unusual financial documents. The Saudi courier, the Japanese ones. Those are not minor things. This is spy versus spy stuff with tens and tens and tens of billions. Even I would venture a guess approaching hundreds of billions of dollars worth of wealth denominated that you have to remember at critical moments when a tide turns with certain financial transactions that have been being stopped, impeded, diverted, if they were allowed to go their full course, they gain momentum also and may reorder the way that many other people do their transactions. At some point in here, there will be a handful of transactions change the course of the whole market. It's like when a river is trying to go down a certain direction and there's one little bend in it that's just monstrous, and the torrent becomes so large it goes right over that bend in the river. Suddenly the river goes straight there and cuts a new path. And so anywhere in here we could see some very market shattering transactions. And suddenly what everybody thought was a wall, what everybody thought was not going to change, changes very quickly. And we're in those times right now, and this is that season where you could have very dramatic moments, especially towards the end of this month. And without getting buried in it, there were things that came up that reconfirmed that, I think we expect drama at the tail end of this month, and that to pick up momentum. Some of it may be fairly subtle. So, I'm not saying, jump out of windows or pull the hatch on your bunker, but don't be naive. This is every bit as serious as we're saying, and more serious, and it's gaining momentum. Stay on your course, make your preps, and get out of the way.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that does
right.
clear some things up. Appreciate that. And hopefully you don't feel too gamed by what I did, but I appreciate you calling in and giving your
by the
your
way,
advice.
just one little thing here, too. Of course, those planes never showed up. Everybody was getting all stressed out about. But there is one thing there in Libya that I think we should at least keep in the back of our mind. The one guy that knew what Dad was up to and how involved he was with Western intelligence agencies with what they were doing in the Mideast, was working with them and knew the calls that were being made and assistance that was being provided, and also where all that money in the form of gold was that his dad had is safe. So safe had been being kept by the militia that, by whatever means, ended up with custody of Saif Gaddafi. in their care. That militia controlled the airport. The airport's what got bombed and blasted and torn to smithereens by the other groups, so that militia, was one of the ones that getting the airport's like a key location. Well, that was one of the groups that we had been assisting and backing. That's why they got blessed with getting a hold of SAFE, which was like a king pin, an ace card, a joker card, if you will. So where's SAFE? Anybody seen SAFE? Anybody heard anything about SAFE? What's going on with SAFE?
I gotta check the guest
SAFE
room.
is a key player. Yeah, check the guest room. I want to know where SAFE's at. And I hope SAFE is okay, because SAFE has got a lot to say. And by the way, what about all those witnesses that have been very efficiently and effectively silenced forever?
You mean the
in
dozen?
Libya?
The 15,
well,
right?
15?
Yeah,
15 that might have been with direct knowledge of Benghazi. But what about the ones that had direct knowledge of what was going up in Syria? Not 15.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
15 at all. Yeah. And by the way, where were a lot of them located?
Do
and
tell.
who's been doing the bombing runs, and why were those bombing runs being done? Most of your listeners are aware that there's been bombing runs going on over Libya, but it hasn't been widely published. That airport didn't get blasted to smithereens by firecrackers. There is spy versus spy stuff going on right under our noses. A lot of it's murky, and there's different ways to tell the tale. But, Gowdy and his people are being kept on a very tight leash as to what they're going to address and how they're going to address it. And the only way that Gowdy is going to get anywhere close to the truth is if there is pressure from the public to cut the BS and go for what the real prize is in this whole thing. What the hell was the rest of the story going on in Libya and Benghazi? Why was that annex there in the first place? What was the activity that the ambassador was doing in Benghazi that was so critical that he had to be there on 9/11? What was the Turkish Consul General doing there? What was really happening there? Not the BS about the, little soiree that was supposed to happen to visit some people there in Benghazi. Not the cover story. What was really going on? It's all about Syria. Let's get serious. If you don't get to Syria in the hearings about what happened in Benghazi, then you didn't get shit. That's the way it is.
That's it.
Anybody wants to say different? They don't know what the hell they're talking about. If you want to marginalize this whole story, marginalize this. Marginalize Syria, and you win. So if you're a player that is helping marginalize Syria, you're playing for the bad guys inside of our own operation. And don't tell me otherwise, because it was a scam from the beginning. It cost lives, including the ambassadors, and somebody did something that was very poorly advised in this whole broad operation, and, by the way, destabilized the whole region, and ultimately probably has laid the groundwork for us to lose a whole lot of our kids in World War III. Don't stand for it. I can't even, the words that I would really like to say about these people, they're laughing about the fact that your kids are going to go get killed in their war to create their new world empire. They're laughing at you. Come on. Because you're just a dupe doing their deeds to feather their nest to create their new world order with your country, your government, your kids, your blood, your toil. And on the way, by the way, they're going to break the machine that feeds your family. They're going to break the mill that grinds the flour, that puts food in your pantry. Because when it's all over, they don't need us. They don't want us. We are an impediment to their long-range plans. And if you don't get in that in your brain, they win. Better figure it out sooner than later. You'll figure somewhere down the road, every person in this audience with the brain awake is going to agree with me. Right now, a lot of them might be kind of rolling their eyes and wondering. You'll agree with me eventually. Believe me, I'm right on this one.
No, I know you are. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Appreciate it. God bless, man.
All right.
Folks, some tough words, but needed to hear. You know, you can get pretty passionate when you lose people close to you in an event, and just imagine this: having a friend or friends in victims of a multiple homicide, and having the police agency tell you, well, it was just an unfortunate accident, or give you some other sort of explanation for it. That's the position that W is coming from. And yeah, should he be passionate about it? Absolutely, because you would too. With respect to Benghazi. And he raised a good point, ladies and gentlemen. What about the safe Gaddafi? Where is he? Look, I do know the connection between W and SAFE in terms of the history, shall we say. He knows what he's talking about. There are a lot more questions that we need to have answered than just the normal questions, and no one is asking the questions. And sometimes it's difficult. I'm not blaming people, because sometimes it's difficult to ask questions when you don't know what questions to ask. But certainly we know what questions are futile to ask, or have nothing to do with anything to ask, and that's anything to do with diplomatic security. We do have, I do have a source close to the Gaudi, the House Intelligence Committee, House Select Committee on Benghazi, that is providing me with some information. I can say that because, folks, you just can't believe how many people are involved in that at multiple levels. So, I mean, that's like saying, yeah, I know someone in the Capitol. Okay, it's not putting anyone at risk. But having said that, according to the information, the latest information I have, and I'll have more over the next couple of days, is the fact that Gaudi has got to get clearance from people like John Bonnier if he wants documents. In fact, they have a list of documents drawn up. They've got a list of potential witnesses drawn up before that can even come out of the gate, out of those offices, be presented. That they've got to, Gaudi's got to get clearance for those. The other thing too that you should be aware of is the partisan aspect of this is in play. Regardless, you might think, well, it's a nonpartisan issue, and really it is. However, the progressives, who are really on the side of the globalist Luciferian agenda, they in fact are saying, well, you know what, good luck trying to get the documents that you want to get. They are going to be throwing up a bunch of roadblocks and pushing the direction of the dialogue toward the security at Tripoli, as opposed to what really happened in Benghazi. Oh, and also Qatala, the guy behind Abu Qatala. I shouldn't say the guy behind. Well, the guy that they said, they meaning the FBI, the military, the special forces, said was an integral part of the attack on the CIA compound. Who was arrested on June 15th of this past year, Ahmed Abu Khatallah taken into custody. Just so you know, he has been pretty much told to stick to the narrative, and the narrative is the fact that this is all over a video. Yes, that's correct. Here comes the video again. And the evidence that they will produce are the protesters, the people behind the violence in Cairo. Just so you know, this is where the conversation is being directed. There was the conversation that was held when Khatallah was picked up and transported back to the United States on the ship that he was on. And that conversation reportedly, when I say conversation, it was probably a monologue, a mind bender of a conversation, perhaps literally, against Khatallah to make him talk the way that they want him to talk. If they bring him up, and I'm sure they will, as a witness, Khatallah will say, well, this was definitely an extension of the Cairo, and even to a lesser extent what was going on in Tripoli at the time. The other thing, too, is we do know that the 7 Iranian Red Crescent workers who were kidnapped months earlier, play a critical role in Benghazi, in the attack in Benghazi. The attackers from Ansar al-Sharia, from the Iranian faction, those Iranian Red Crescent workers were in fact spies. They were kidnapped off near the CIA compound. But the bottom line too is there was an attack against the CIA compound. I believe it was on July 31st, where a mortar shell penetrated the wall of the CIA villa. They were checking for certain things, including the potential presence of the Iranian Red Crescent workers who mysteriously reappeared on the streets of Benghazi following the attacks of 9/11. My view is that, based on information I've received, is that the CIA had these people, or Western intelligence, I shouldn't say just the CIA, Western intelligence, in fact, had these Red Crescent workers in custody elsewhere. Was that part of the, what happened in Benghazi, or was that a extremely important factor? No, it was one of the factors, but it wasn't a pivotal factor. And lastly, about Benghazi, and I'll say this once again, there's going to be a lot, you're going to see an uptick in the talk about this massive conspiracy kidnapping plot with respect to the blind sheikh. Forget about that. Nothing to do with anything. That could very well have been discussed afterward, after the attacks, but it had nothing to do with the attacks whatsoever. That's coming from really someone connected within the regime of the renegade chief. That story is being floated by the renegade in chief and his associates. So anyone who is talking about a failed kidnapping, a failed hostage, or a fake kidnapping / failed rescue attempt, or for the blind sheik, is actually doing us a disservice, the truth seekers a disservice. But all of that to say this, where we are today, the headlines are so far off of where we should be looking. As I said, is Ebola a threat? Yes, it is. Is the mysterious illness in New York City a threat? Certainly it is. What about the shootings and the various other issues? Are they important to talk about? Well, yes. But at the end of the day, the bottom line here is we're faced with a very severe threat against our economy. This is how it's I believe how it's really going to be exacerbated. It would be like taking a wound and ripping off not just the Band-Aid, but the stitches or staples underneath. The Band-Aid, of course, covering the scars or covering the surgical incision from the past, terrorist attacks, and from the attacks from within. I hope that made sense to you folks. So we open with a critical part of the show with respect to the economy. We successfully were able to get W to call in with his 2 cents, or actually with his $1.02, because it is worth a lot, exponentially, of course, if you listen to exactly what he's got to say. And we're now closing with this. Please watch the economy. And don't forget, business people, if you're listening to this, what is this? The third quarter, right? When does the third quarter end? When does the third quarter end?
The end
January, February, March. Go ahead.
The end of this month.
Right. Watch the numbers that are reported for the third quarter of this year, and watch the response. Watch what happens from the Fed to the renegade to the businesses in general. It's going to be a very important aspect to consider. You're going to see dismal numbers, and watch what happens as a result of the numbers that are disclosed. And when are they usually disclosed, Joe?
What, in November?
Well, the middle of October. Toward the end of October.
And in other economic news, while we're on the fact right now, or on this issue right now, there is tax revenues, $2.66 trillion in tax revenues for 2014 hits a brand new record in August. Inflation-adjusted federal tax revenues hit a record $2,663,426,000,000 for the first 11 months of the fiscal year this year, August. But the federal government still ran an almost $600 billion deficit during that time, according to the latest monthly Treasury statement. Each month, the Treasury publishes the government's total receipts, including all revenue from individual income taxes, corporate income taxes, social insurance and retirement taxes, unemployment insurance, estate and gift taxes, custom duties, and miscellaneous receipts. The largest share of the tax revenue so far this year has come from individual income taxes, which totaled about half of that, at $1.233 trillion in the first 11 months since 2014. The rest came from corporate income taxes, and it gives a list here. But in a constant 2014 dollars, the $2.66 trillion that the federal government collected from October through August in the fiscal year 2014, more than half was collected by individual income tax earnings. And yet, while this record number of taxes were collected, the government still ran over a $600 billion deficit. I mean, that's just pull your hair out kind of numbers.
Business as usual, then, correct?
Well, no, not at all. Well, yeah, I guess you'd say that if you look at the trends over the last 10 years, but the taxes are growing more and more. The incomes are getting less and less. The workforce continues to drop. The federal government spending continues to increase, and the only reprieve is that people are getting is if you are a interest-based or some type of lobbyist-type corporation, that pays no taxes. You have these companies that make billions of dollars of profits a year that pay no taxes here in America. But we can see that the individual worker is getting hurt the most, with the most revenue from that record $2.66 trillion tax revenue coming from them.
Right.
And that at a time when meat and milk and grocery products are at an all-time high, gas prices are still hugely inflated. I mean, that's a lot of families are finding it hard to make ends meet. Deciding which bills they should pay this month versus which they can wait to pay next month. And these are families, that would once be considered middle-class families. Not even talking about the people who aren't in the middle class, who are probably struggling much worse with these rise of prices and the slashing of benefits, slashing of incomes and revenues. Small businesses are hiring at an all-time low pace. Companies are slashing their workforce, not only due to the taxes, but due to the Obamacare law. You have a lot of places that are cutting the employees' hours to 29 hours a week so they don't have to cover insurance costs by the Obamacare mandate. And that's hurting families also and individual workers. Just continues to spiral downhill. And I know we opened that with the economy and W called in, but I saw this article. 10 Arab states agree to join U.S.-led military campaign against Islamic State. Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, 6 other Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, agree to join coalition to fight radical Sunni militants. The United States signed up Arab allies on Thursday to a coordinated military campaign against Islamic State fighters, a major step in building regional support for President Obama's plan to strike both sides of the Syrian-Iraqi frontier. After the talks, Saudi Arabia... Oh, shoot, here we go. My shock player just died here. Saudi Arabia, summer capital Jeddah, Secretary of State John Kerry won backing from 10 Arab countries, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and the 6 others, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, for a coalition to fight the Sunni militants that have seized swaths of Iraq and Syria. Arab nations play a critical role in that coalition, the leading role really across the lines of effort, military support, humanitarian aid to work towards the stop of the flow of illegal funds, Kerry told the news conference. Non-Arab Sunni power Turkey also attended the talks, but 2 other major regional players, Shiite Iran and Syria itself, were excluded, a sign of the difficulty of building a coalition across the Middle East, sectarian battle lines. I have a question. What, if anything, is Israel doing against ISIS? And what is this behind this 10 Arab nation military?
Could this be the what Bill Salas was talking about the Confederacy of Arab Nations is spoken about, referenced in Psalm 83.
Rick Wiles mentioned that today on this show, exactly saying the same thing. Is this the 10 Arab regions that are coming together? And I know that I saw a report where we were giving missiles to one of these areas or one of these countries directly. I believe it was Stinger missiles. Another was promised air support, airplanes, fighter jets, to be more specific. And this is something to keep our eyes on, as this is something that could be biblical in nature. And yes, it is a 10 Arab state coalition put together by the State Department and the presidency, or the presidential administration, and they said they're coming together for comprehensive fights against ISIS. At the same time, the State Department saying we're not at a war against ISIS or ISIL. The White House today said we are at war with ISIS, trying to clarify what the State Department couldn't say yesterday.
The State Department wouldn't say, not couldn't say, wouldn't say.
Couldn't or wouldn't say. And
well, it couldn't because of the confines given by the Renegade Chief's office, right?
And
right.
We have a few minutes before the break here. I did want to hit this.
Go ahead.
Did you see this? The State Department was purchased 160,000 suits, Ebola suits. Lakeland Industries, Inc. today announced the global availability of its protective apparel for use of handling the Ebola virus in response to the increasing demand for specialty protective suits to be worn by healthcare workers and other people exposed to Ebola. Lakeland is increasing its manufacturing capacity for these garments and includes proprietary processes for specialized seam sealing, a far superior technology for protecting against viral hazards than non-sealed products. But either way, the U.S. State Department alone putting out a bid for 160,000 suits for the Ebola protective apparel, trying to address the threat to global health, they say. At the same time, we're getting reports that Ebola could possibly go airborne, and some experts are predicting anywhere from 1.6 million infections to 5 million people infected here in the near future.
Well, once again, the economic aspect of that, folks, please don't underestimate the strike to our economy because of, I mean, I understand the threat of Ebola, but also understand the threat of Ebola, if that makes sense. You are going to have places essentially quarantined, and that's going to affect commerce. And when it affects commerce, because of the fragility of our infrastructure, our economy, that's going to be extremely bad for for everything. So there is going to be, and Jonathan Cahn had from the Harbinger had talked about the stages of judgment, and I know some people think that America is not being singled out for judgment, but we can leave that to other people to argue and discuss. But if we look at what happened, and this ties into the economic stuff that I began talking about in the beginning of the show, if you look at what happened just very recently at Ground Zero in New York City, where that a tree was replaced, or not replaced, but actually removed, I find it very interesting because it is events right now. Current events are actually taking place in parallel with Jonathan Cahn's comparisons between Isaiah chapter 9 verse 10, the 9 progressive warnings he had and talked about in his Harbinger, the fact that the American Sycamore Buttonwood Agreement was signed under the created New York Stock Exchange and New York Stock and Exchange Board back in 1792, outside of 68 Wall Street. Well, of course, the sycamore tree of Ground Zero, a beam from the North Tower struck it, destroyed it. A cedar was planted in its place, a conifer tree, and of course that tree had since died, recently died, I should say, and without much fanfare, or with little fanfare, that tree was removed. And why am I mentioning this relative to, what does that have to do with anything? Well, when you look at the situation today, you had mentioned, Joe, we're people, normal middle-class American people are having trouble paying their bills. I know. I know.
We know.
But look, you go to the store and, geez, 93% lean ground beef or maybe 85% lean ground beef. The difference is 80 cents. That 80 cents can be used on something else, or 2-3 pounds can be used on something else. We understand that. The price of gas, you watch. You're very careful with going to the lowest, even if it's a penny or two lower. We understand. So when you're on a budget, but see, all of this we can go back to, for example, the latest sign of judgment would be 9/11, the economic shaking, and the Shemitah, the 7th sabbatical year or Sabbath year. It's either a blessing or a judgment, depending on whether a nation follows God's instructions. And now we're entering into a specific Shemitah that begins here in September.
September 25th, from what listeners say, and we're getting a lot of emails
right.
and people asking us to get into this, and we are coming up against the break. We have a guest coming on in the second hour, but we are getting a lot of communications asking us to cover this at some point. So we need to do that, maybe with Jonathan Cahn if possible.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are working on getting Mr. Cahn onto the program, and Jonathan Cahn onto the program, and for an entire 3-hour period. Now, I know he was on Coast to Coast. I think it was last night. That's all I'm going to say about that. You can get more. Well, that's all I'm going to say about that. But if we get him on, it'll be a very productive interview with respect to his information. If you haven't seen his presentation in person, boy, that's well worth the price of any admission to go. Folks, you're listening to a very special Friday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Up next, author, good friend of the program, Maria Canisse, number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, I'd like you to go back to the first hour of the program, obviously not now, but at some later time, and re-listen to what W had to say, re-listen to the information in that first hour. You'll understand why. I think a light bulb will go off, and there were some things that were said within the first hour that are very important to understand. Now, we have up one of my favorite people in the world, and I mean that. I've known Maria Canisse as an author for a couple of years now. She is just an incredible woman. She is the author of Strength for Tough. Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can talk here. Maria Canisse is the author of Strength for Tough Times, which gives biblical encouragement to Christians, for Christians. She's also a researcher who's written numerous articles about current events from a Christian perspective. It's kind of like what we do verbally. She was raised in a secular humanist, she was raised a secular humanist and was the first Christian in her family. Now think about that. So she has a heart for those who feel lost. If you feel lost out there, you're going to be able to connect with this guest. Now, since Obama was elected, oh my goodness, 6 years ago in 2008, since he came on the national scene, it's become increasingly clear to our guest, Maria Canisse, and by the way, she spells her name K-N-E-A-S, it's become increasingly clear to her that this government, the government of the United States, is anti-Christian, and we're heading for persecution. Folks, we're there. Unfortunately, most Christians will be blindsided by everything that's coming because, as Steve often says, and Pastor Langford says, and everyone else that we have on the show says, most pastors are not warning them or preparing them for it.
Hey, Dad, I don't mean to interrupt you, but can you pull up the studio and try to bring her on? Every time I do it, it puts her back in mute for whatever reason.
Yeah, sure.
I want to know if it's just my computer. And if we can't bring her on, we'll have to just call her back because I've never seen her do this before.
I can give this a whirl.
Tell me if you have the same experience as I do here.
All right. Stand by, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have some Jeopardy music there. Okay, now refresh, and I think we should be good to go.
Well, look at your screen again.
Well, that's interesting. How does that work?
I don't know.
I think we'll have to get a representative from the phone company. I mean, the NSA to talk about this. Seriously, I'm aware right now that there is a.
We'll have to call her then.
All right,
Maria, if you could drop off, we'll call you right back.
Yeah, I am aware, folks, that there is in fact a campaign against this book. I can tell you this book is being blackballed by many non-Christians, and it's something that I've seen firsthand. So it's one ringy dingy for those who remember Laugh in the late 60s.
Hello.
There we go. There's Maria Canisse, author of the book we're going to be talking about tonight, Prepare for Persecution, Perilous Times, and Biblical Comfort by Maria Canisse. Maria, welcome to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Well, I'm glad to be on. I'm glad we got through technically here.
Well,
I was getting some weird noises on my side here while I was listening to you on the phone.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah. I got a question for you. Are you sure you want to talk to a dangerous character like me? Because according to official government documents, I'm an extremist and a potential domestic terrorist because I'm an evangelical Christian. Some documents, that's at the top of the list, and things like Al-Qaeda and the Ku Klux Klan are way down.
I think we'll have to chance it. Yes. I think we'll
you think you'll take your chances on that?
I think so. Yeah, I do. Maybe because what you've got to say is so important. Folks, look, I'm going to be putting up the link to this book, Prepare for Persecution, Perilous Times and Biblical Comfort by Maria Canise. I'm going to be putting up a link to this book. Look for it on hagmanandhagmann.com. If not by the end of this interview, then certainly at the end of this broadcast. I would urge everyone to get themselves a copy of this book. It's inexpensive. It's under $14. I think it's like $13 and some odd cents. Let me just double check here. So
it's a great book.
So I'm not.
I think it's $13.23 on Amazon right now.
$13.29 actually.
Okay.
Okay, and I've got to tell you something. It's worth every penny of it, folks. You will have this book is a must-have. Look. Well, I'm just going to, Joe. I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's just rock and roll with Maria here.
All right, Maria. I want to start out by asking you, why did you write this book with the topic that you covered? Ever
since. Actually, I've been very aware of persecution for many, many years. We followed the ministry of Open Doors that ministers to persecuted Christians overseas, and we've read biographies of people like Corrie ten Boom and persecuted Russians, and we've been very involved with all kinds of ministries to persecuted people. And then I'm seeing more and more signs that we're having it here, that it's coming here. And once Obama was elected in 2008, man, that really started escalating. Now, with the Open Doors, it says that when they go to countries where Christians are persecuted, the Christians always have two questions. One is, why didn't anybody warn us that this was going to happen? And the other is, why didn't anybody prepare us for it? Now, the pastors should be warning the people, and they should be preparing them. And there are a few precious godly men who are doing that, but most of them are not. Most of them don't realize what's going on, or else they're afraid to talk about it because some people might get offended. You might have lower numbers attending the church. They've got a debt because of their building program, and these sorts of things they get into. Whatever the reasons, most people are either clueless or unprepared, and Christians cannot afford to be blindsided.
Your fear of Christians being blindsided, period, or actually being led down the wrong path is what led you to write this book. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. And that if they're not, it takes time to learn how to forgive. It takes time to learn how to not stay angry at people. Like when Corrie and Betsy ten Boom were in a concentration camp in Germany because they hid Jews in their home. Betsy, right away, she saw the guards as being like trapped, tormented animals, and she forgave them and she prayed for them. Some of those guards got saved after the war. But Corrie hated the Nazis, and it was very hard for her to get over that and get to the point where she could actually forgive them. Her starting point, well, normally it's God make me willing and able, but her starting point was God make me willing to be willing, and even that took a long time. So we need to practice. When you want to build up muscles, you work against resistance. So if somebody does something nasty to you, instead of getting upset, you can say, oh, here's an opportunity to develop my forgiveness muscles and my patience muscles and my love muscles. I can build them up some, because that's very small compared to the things we're going to be up against in the future. So we need to start our spiritual bodybuilding, if you want to call it that, now. And we need to wake up and realize that time is short.
Indeed, and we've, by the way, folks, we've spoken off air about these very issues. And not that our audience doesn't know that our government is persecuting us. What are some of the ways, and especially some of the subtle ways, that Christians are being persecuted right now?
Well, one of the ways is Christian children are being brainwashed in our public schools against Christianity, and even in our colleges, they're doing everything they can to undermine Not every individual teacher does it, but it's I'm sure that's one of the goals of Common Core. And but anyway, for instance, there you might have heard about Hobby Lobby and their big fight. Well, they're not the only ones. There are 63 different Christian businesses that have lawsuits about provisions in Obamacare that would force them to go against their religious convictions. And one of their attorneys said, the United States government is taking the remarkable position that private individuals lose their religious freedom when they make a living. Another example is, remember the government shutdown?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't allow chaplains to minister on the military bases. And so the chaplain says, well, the men need us. They need the ministry. We'll do it for free. It won't cost you a penny. And they still said, no, we forbid you. If you go on that base and minister, we will put you in jail. Well, that's obviously not about money, because they were going to do it for free, so it wouldn't cost a penny. And it costs money to arrest people and lock them up and keep them in jail and drag them through court. So that's not about money, that's persecution. That's because they didn't want the Christian chaplains ministering. And it may have also been a way of testing the waters to see how much they could get away with.
Right.
One congressman said, time and again, this administration demonstrates it is waging war against the very religious freedoms upon which America was founded. And Thomas Sowell, I love that man. He said, giving leaders enough power to create social justice is giving them enough power to destroy all justice, all freedom, and all human dignity. And of course that includes freedom of religion and freedom of conscience. But there's other stuff. Obamacare is they're trying to force doctors and nurses to do abortions when it's against their religious beliefs and their conscience. The court decisions and government bureaucratic decrees that are undermining freedom of religion, and then I'll talk in more detail about this later, but there's actually forced re-education, they call it, or they're brainwashing Christians. They're trying to make them change their beliefs and their moral values.
Wow. Something you said here, and yeah, we'll come back to this, but I did find out I've got a friend who's a doctor who walked away from his position because of that abortion. What happened was, because of Obamacare, there was a merger. There was a forced merger of an insurance company and a hospital. Imagine that. That forced this conglomeration into the exchange, the Obamacare exchange, and would mandate every nurse, or every doctor, I should say, every physician, whether a PCP or I think OBGYN and PCPs had to sign a piece of paper saying that they would agree to conduct or to advise on and participate in abortion. So what you're saying is absolutely 100% true. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought that was important.
And my doctor would leave too. He wouldn't put up with that for a moment. Also, if they tried to force him to do euthanasia, which is, he's from Holland, so he's, being Dutch, he's very sensitive about that, because in Holland they've gone crazy with euthanasia. It's not just voluntary, it's involuntary. That's a fancy name for murder.
Right, and it just, Maria, just as an aside, I'll just say this. We have a family member, one of my extended family members, who came to me and said that she had to actually sign end of life, like a living will type thing, and have it on file with her insurance carrier. This was done through the Obama or the Affordable Health Care Act exchange. So in other words, they forced her into saying, well, I don't want to have anything but palliative care, given a certain set of circumstances that were pretty broad. I've got to tell you that we're not.
They can also do stuff like you don't want extreme care. Well, then they can turn around and say, well, food and water are extreme care. Exactly,
and that's what was mentioned: hydration and food. And I immediately thought of Coach Meyer and Terry Schiavo. But
and how many people know what hydration means? That's fancy language for most people. How about water? Make it so big.
Yeah.
But if people understood, they wouldn't sign it.
Yeah, it's what I saw was just absolutely incredible. But didn't mean to take you off. Go ahead, Joe.
You mentioned Obamacare, and there's many ways that Obamacare is against Christian and Christian principles. What are other examples of how the government is persecuting Christians?
Well, one thing is what they're doing in the military. They've said that it's against the rules for the soldiers to share their faith. Now, if you're on a battlefield with somebody who could get killed any minute, that's exactly, or maybe they've been badly wounded, that's exactly when they most need to hear about Jesus. And they're saying, oh, we can court-martial you, we can throw you in prison for that. And even the chaplains aren't allowed to share their faith. So you go, there's some chaplains who've gotten in trouble for praying in the name of Jesus. Well, what else is a Christian chaplain supposed to do? So I'm sure the Muslim chaplains and Wiccan chaplains don't run into problems like that. It's just the Christians.
Well, even in your book, and I'll just step back a few paragraphs in this conversation. You have a quote from 1977. This kind of struck me, ladies and gentlemen, as being just absolutely astounding. You wrote in your book, and this is actually on page 15, folks, her book, Maria Canese, Prepare for Persecution, Perilous Times, and Biblical Comfort. I got to tell you, it's really two books in one. It's the identification of perilous times, and of course it's how we can not only accept but spread biblical comfort. But page 15 you wrote about the quote from 1977, the militant atheists. They've been working on the agenda, a certain agenda, for a long time, and the quote that you wrote was, cited, I should say, we must ask how we can kill the God of Christianity. We need only to ensure that our schools teach only secular knowledge. That goes from really kindergarten through the universities, and I thought that was just outstanding when I read that. I just couldn't believe that was back from 1977.
Well, and it also shows you that the atheists, it's not really they don't believe in God. The militant ones, some of them just don't believe in God, but the ones that are militant like that, that's hating God. That's not lack of belief. You can't want to kill somebody you don't think exists.
Yeah, that's very true. And you also get in the book, too, you also get into some pretty interesting areas where humanists, secularists, and others, I stress others too, getting into occultism, openly promoting which is being openly promoted in the entertainment industry. And
not just the entertainment industry. We know about that in the media and stuff. Also in seminaries under the name of women's spirituality.
Okay.
I have a friend whose sister is an ordained minister and a practicing witch at the same time.
How does that work?
Well, there were two Methodist ministers, clergywomen, who went through a witchcraft initiation ritual, and they were so enthusiastic about it that they wrote about it in a journal for Methodist clergywomen. And their bishop attended, and the journal published it. So here they are recommending this to all these other Methodist clergywomen, ministers, that they go through this witchcraft initiation ritual. And when the bishop was interviewed about it, the bishop was a woman. She couldn't remember whether she'd been to that one or not because she'd been to so many of them, which makes it obvious that she was a witch too.
Okay.
And this other one that I mentioned is not a Methodist. That's a different denomination. I think you'll probably find them all kinds of places.
So I'm confused. I mean, well, not only confused, but I guess I should be confused when you're dealing with this kind of stuff. This is intentional to commingle these ideologies,
right.
these theologies.
Right. There is a web ring called the Cauldron and the Cross, and it's trying to mix witchcraft with Christianity. And there are a lot of websites on there by people who call themselves Christian witches, and there's also one by someone who calls himself a Christian sorcerer. And they think you can mix it without a problem.
Wow.
Which means they don't understand Christianity.
No.
But then again, the Israelites knew the God of the Bible. They had the scriptures, the Old Testament, but they'd go after the Canaanite gods. It's the same thing. That was occult. That was pagan. And by the way, when they went to the temples with the Canaanite gods, they had temple prostitutes. And those prostitutes were men as well as women, and they were children as well as adults. So the moment they got into these Canaanite religions, automatically the men became promiscuous, and they practiced homosexuality and pedophilia. And then the other thing that, yeah. So the root of all of that is people losing their Christian moorings. Now the other thing that they did is they sacrificed babies to Moloch and other gods. They burned them alive. Well, we don't burn them alive, but we've killed 55 million babies at abortion clinics. So,
right.
So it's the same thing. When you turn away from the God of the Bible, you wind up with this stuff. And the only...
Go ahead, Joe.
You have a great quote on page 41 of your book from Judges 10, verses 12 to 14. And if I can, I just want to read this. It says, the Zidonians also, and the Amalekites, and the Mannonites did oppress you, and ye did cry to me, and I delivered you out of their hand. Yet ye have forsaken me, and served other gods. Wherefore I will deliver you no more. Go cry unto the gods which ye have chosen. Let them deliver you in your time of tribulation.
That's right. You really want them? Are you sure you really want them? I'll send prophets to warn you and call you back. I'll keep sending them. And if you keep refusing to listen, well, after a while, God says, you really want it? Okay, you can have them. See how much good they do you.
Okay. And if I can just speak to the listeners, what really struck me, ladies and gentlemen, about this book, about Maria's book, is when she sent this to me, I picked it up, I read it, I read through it, I put it down, and I picked it up again, and I'm looking at, and this was in anticipation of the 9/11 broadcast that we did yesterday, and doing research for about 9/11. And then that got me sidetracked to Jonathan Cahn's The Harbinger. That's not part of this directly, but the economic shaking that did occur 7 years after, in 2008, did catch my attention. And the economic condition that we're in right now caught my attention, which kind of brought me to, and follow me on this now, which kind of brought me to the thought that, I wonder if there are modern parallels between America and Germany before Hitler became a dictator. Of course, there were financial aspects, huge financial aspects that brought Hitler into power, and there are huge financial aspects that took place at the time Obama assumed power. I'm not going to say he was elected, but assumed power. So what I thought, and I'll just end my statement by saying this, what Maria Canisse has done in her book is really outlined step by step how our government right now is persecuting us, but especially the Christians, focusing on the Christians. And not just our government, but as she just said, atheists and humanists, they're persecuting us. And there are many parallels. One thing, too, that I want to ask you, Maria, is what about Muslims? How are they doing it? Because we got to throw them into the mix here too at this point.
Okay, well, with the Muslims, it's pretty obvious when you see them cutting heads off and that kind of thing. But in America, they're doing it through propaganda. You could call that public relations, but that's just a fancy name for propaganda. They're also doing it by having classes on Islam in our public schools, not only in college, but in the public schools. There's some schools where for a month or more, the students are required to chant Muslim prayers. They're encouraged to dress like Muslims, take a Muslim name. I mean, they're really indoctrinating them in Islam in public schools. Then another way...
Yeah. And by the way, folks, I just want to say that her book is very well, has citations for the statements that she makes. There's a portion of the back with notes, with source notes and citations. So everything that she's saying here is absolutely 100% true. Not that you folks don't believe it, but you've got a source now. If you're, as I always use the example, if you're at a family gathering, speaking with Billy Bob, who's saying, "Oh, you're full of beans." We'll take a look at this, Billy Bob. But go ahead, Maria.
Well, one of the chapters has 61 endnotes. That's the one called Heading Toward Dictatorship, where I show a lot of parallels between us and Nazi Germany before Hitler became an open dictator. And I started writing that in 2007 and then kept adding on to it. It started out as an article on a friend's website. And then as things kept happening, it kept adding to it and adding to it. But that is very, very carefully documented. The whole book is, but that one especially. I had an interesting experience here. I had 3 men come here because they're going to widen the road, and there were technical things about my particular property that, made it difficult and whatnot. The director came out, and the engineer and another man. So after we went through all this stuff, they were really nice, and I thought, gee, I bet these guys are Christians. So I asked them afterwards, are you Christians? And they were. And I told them about the persecution, about some very specific things, in particular things that have happened to a baker in Colorado, including brainwashing, which I can get into later. But these guys had been totally clueless. They had no idea anything like that was going on. And they were absolutely riveted. And they were just, oh! And then I told them the book is in 2 parts. The second part is biblical encouragement and comfort and guidance, and the relief on their faces when they heard about that. And that's one reason I really hope people will get this, because when the hammer falls, that's when we're really going to need it. We need it now to prepare, but we're going to need it then. I've had times when I've been going through rough stuff myself, and I read my own chapters at the second part of the book, and they helped me. Because God was showing me stuff while I wrote that.
I like to say, and I've read this, and I've talked to my wife about this. I've talked to different people about your book. In fact, I've given your book to others, and I like to say that you're actually building a Christian or biblical muscle memory when you read this book. Number one, as you would point out, folks, the first part is, here are the problems. Here's what's going on right now. Here's where we as Christians are. And even if if you don't think it's happening to you, it will. Believe me, it will happen to you. Either directly square right smack in the nose or at the periphery. It happened to us. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, it happened to Joe and I. We lost the largest client that we had because we would not shut up about what we believed in terms of both Christianity and current events and the times that we're in. So, having said that, it's interesting because you bring up that point about 3 men, Maria. It's interesting that they would not know or would be oblivious, because we deal with this all the time. We think everyone knows what's going on, and that's not true, is it? Like, there's a lot of people that just don't know what's really taking place.
The mainstream media doesn't tell them, and their pastors aren't telling them. I'm going to give you the titles of the chapters in the front part that gives the bad news, okay? Understanding the Times, Brainwashing Christians, Thought Police in Colleges, teaching kids to be sociopaths, a biblical warning for America, heading towards dictatorship, and mainstreaming occultism. By the way, mainstreaming occultism is one of the things we have in common with Nazi Germany, and I didn't mention that parallel there, but Hitler and his guys, they were up to their eyeballs in the occult. With us, it's Hollywood and the music industry that's making it popular. Back then, it was books and actually another form of the music industry. It was Wagner's operas.
So they were please explain that. Please explain that.
They were all pagan and glorifying paganism and these pagan gods and everything. And Hitler was really big into that stuff. As a matter of fact, after he'd been to one of those operas, one of his friends found him, and he was shaking, and his face was almost blue. And he said, I've seen him, the Übermensch. He was just shaking all over. I think he had an encounter with the devil then. I think he became devil-possessed at that opera.
Okay.
So,
and, Marie, we've had Paul McGuire on to talk about this very same subject. And folks, let me just say this: those people who are don't want to read Paul McGuire's 400-page book, or think it's like, well, my goodness, that's too much, especially to give to your uncle or brother-in-law or whatever. Maria's book, Preparing for Persecution, fits the bill. It fills the void. Maria's book fills the void here. It provides that information. And that surprised me, too, by the way, how you connect the dots with Hitler, the occult, to a lesser extent, but still in a direct manner than Paul McGuire. I mean, you and Paul McGuire, and I'll even say Greg Jackson, are on the same page, shall we say, about Hitler and the occult, and it just surprised me. So I didn't mean to take up your time, but go ahead.
Well, that's good. One of the things that I'm so concerned about is when this stuff happens, it's so hard on people, and it's difficult to forgive. And Jesus, it's in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Some people say trespasses, depending on which church you go to. As we forgive us as we forgive. In other words, if we don't forgive, you don't forgive. God won't forgive. And immediately after Jesus gave the Lord's Prayer, he said, for if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will forgive you. And if you do not forgive them their trespasses, your heavenly Father will not forgive you. I mean, he makes it so plain in your face right there. You can't miss it. We have got to forgive. And you don't do it because they deserve it. They don't. If they deserved it, you wouldn't need to do it, okay? You do it because you love Jesus. You do it to obey him, and you do it because you love him. And you do it because he forgave us. We all deserve to go to hell.
Yeah.
Now, these monsters who are doing these terrible things deserve it, but we did too.
And we know, that a lot of this is human nature and behavior that we've been bred into, that we've seen from the world or other relatives. What are some good ways to get into this mindset of forgiving people? Because we know it's something you have to work towards, not something that comes naturally.
It goes against the flesh. It doesn't come naturally at all. But Jesus gave the parable of the man who owed his master 10,000 talents. That's an incomprehensible amount of money. Millions, billions, I don't know, but it's incomprehensible according to my study Bible. And the master was going to sell him and his wife and kids into slavery and everything he had to get some money back. Well, the guy falls down on the ground and begs him, please, please give me more time, I'll pay you. Well, there's no way he could pay him back. But the master had mercy on him and he forgave him. That's what God did with us. Okay. Then later this guy comes across a fellow servant who owes him 100 denarii. That's about 3 months' wages. And he grabs him by the throat and shakes him and says, pay me what you owe. And the guy falls on the ground. Oh, please give me more time, give me more time. No, no, no. And he throws him into the debtor's prison. Well, the other servants got upset and went to the master about it, and the master said, well, I forgave you. You should have forgiven him. Because you didn't, I'm taking back that forgiveness, and you are going to not only go in prison, but I'm turning you over to the tormentors, the torturers, until you pay it back. And there's no way he could pay it back, which means he was going to be tormented for the rest of his life. Well, if you look at people who don't forgive, unforgiving people, they're tormented. They don't have peace and joy.
No, actually, their enemies are inside their head 24/7.
Exactly. It's their focus. Booker T. Washington said, I will not give any man the power to make me hate him. And another way he put it, he must have talked about this a number of times. Well, he was born as a slave, and he went through some really rough things. You know how they have horse thieves? Well, they had slave thieves in those days, and someone stole his mother when he was like 2 years old, to sell to somebody else. Well, he went through really hard things. But he said, I will not give any man the power to make me hate him. That gives him power over you when you do that. The other thing is he said, I will not let any man narrow and degrade my soul so much as to make me hate him. He was right on. So he had his priorities right. And the way we do it is we keep the big picture, not the little one. Planet Earth is just a train station. When you're in a train station, the important thing is to get on the right train for the right destination. The big thing is not, did you have a good time in the train station? It's get on the right train for the right destination. Are we going to get in the glory train to heaven, or are we going to get in the other train that goes to hell? We can lose track of that.
Well, yeah, of course. And folks, I'm right there, a part of that the human aspect, the human frailties, whether it be unforgiveness or forgiveness, or the lack of forgiveness, or I'm an offender, a backslider, as Steve would say. So I understand that. I just want to touch on one thing here, and I know we're jumping around, Maria, but
that's fine.
The one thing you mentioned in your book here is something that Nathan Leal talked about and others talked about. That's the 2014 Grammy Awards. And, of course, folks, remember those? Featured a music video called Dark Horse. It's overtly occult. You talk about this in your book. And there were so many enthusiastic reviews of this music video. A gossip columnist referred to the two singers as being fiery Satanists. Millions of people worldwide watch the Grammy Awards. What the heck is going on here? As of mid-June 2014, just a few months ago, online music video, the Dark Horse, had been viewed over 400 million times. Think about that. Over 400 million views. So what's going on here with this?
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
Aspect?
You know the old saying, nature abhors a vacuum? If you don't have real love for God and real worship for God, something else is going to come in there. And people want something that's strong and intense. And then they see these movie guys doing it, your favorite movie star or singer or whatever's into it. Like people can get into Satanism just because you're a kid and you're imitating a movie star, and they're not being evil, super evil, wanting to do evil bad right away. They just want to be cool. So you get into it to be cool.
Yeah.
Well, then why?
Satanism is the most overt, evil, blasphemous, most hideous offense to God out there. But in spite of that, you point out in your book that Satanists are a tax-exempt religion that's recognized by the state.
That's right. They are. And also, they have their equivalent of denominations. They have their equivalent, for instance, of the Unitarians. When we went to a Unitarian church for a while, all they ever talked about was politics and psychology. They didn't believe in God. And they sure didn't believe in Jesus. We studied a lot about Ignotan and the sun god Ra.
Right.
We didn't study about Jesus. Okay? So they were actually programming us against Christianity in every way they could, against faith. But they call themselves Christians. Okay, so they don't really believe God exists. They weren't into praying. One time my parents went looking for a Bible in that church, and they couldn't find a single Bible anywhere. The only time you really heard about God was sometimes in the music at the worship service, but that's just because it was nice music. It wasn't because they really believed it. So you can have Satanists that are sort of like that. They don't really think the devil's real. This is just cool. We're play acting with the rituals is just, stuff. Then you get to where, you want power. Okay, I'll get power from the rituals, but they don't realize the devil's real. You're trying to get it from him. And at each stage that people go, there are recruiters in there looking for the ones that are ripe to bring in deeper, in other words, more overtly evil. And so then they lure them in further and further, and then after a while they realize, the devil really is real, but then they tell him he's the good guy. That's what Luciferians say. They say Lucifer was the good guy, and he came to rescue us from the tyranny of the God of the Bible. And the fall in the garden they consider was rescuing Adam and Eve, and was a good thing. So, okay, so now they're saying the devil's real, but he's good. And then they get to the point where they're so power hungry and so demonized that they recognize that he's evil, it's overt, it's in your face, and then they get to the point where they're willing to rape children and kill babies and all that stuff, So it's not like every Satanist they're not all the same. You can't lump people together in any group. People are individuals,
Well, that's very true.
And I personally know two Satanists who became Christians. Now, one of them I know I've talked to on the phone a few times, and he has a ministry. I don't know him well personally. The other one is a guy I know very well personally. He was in my church. And he told me about some stuff, but he's a very serious Christian. And he got into that kind of thing because his family was heavily into drugs, and drugs and the occult tying together. For one thing, people that take drugs, that's an open door to getting demonized, which is one reason why it's part of witchcraft rituals and stuff that witch doctors do, and, Indian medicine men and everything else. It opens them up to these spirits. Well, some of them know that they're demons. The Satanists do. The voodoo guys do. Most of them don't. They think they're good, like the New Agers who think they have spirit guides that are benevolent, and they're not. They're demons.
Are all spirit guides in that context demons? I mean, that's.
I don't think so, because the Holy Spirit doesn't work that way. It's a very different thing.
Okay.
When you're doing, like when you blank out your mind and do the chanting and stuff to get a spirit guide, that's not how God works. When God spoke to the prophets in the Bible, it took them by surprise. They weren't doing rituals to try to make it happen. See what I mean?
Yeah,
they're always surprised. And usually they say, "Oh, not me. I'm not worthy," or they're scared of it because they know what happens to prophets. It's a rough life.
In your research, and again, I'm jumping around, but I think it's important because I'm trying to tie all of these loose ends or these ends together. And I mentioned this yesterday during the call-in period, I believe. The guerrilla economist, the guy in the shadows who appears on our show. You probably have heard him on our show. Perhaps. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He walked into.
Like him.
Okay. All right. Good.
He walked in with the Babylonian chanting.
Yeah. Well, now, this goes on. I mean, I don't know why this surprises me, but it seems to be becoming more and more out in the open these days.
Well, I've got a nephew who renounced his Christian faith and married a Wiccan, and he was visiting here, and he played a CD that sounded mellow compared to the, you know, the angry demonic rock. But all at once
Right.
something caught my attention. Wait a minute, they're chanting. Wait a minute, that's a foreign language. What in the world is that? And I've studied. I'm old enough that I've when I was in college we studied Greek and Latin and things like that. And I know some languages, French, teeny bit of Spanish, a little German, and so forth. I can recognize this was totally unlike anything I'd ever heard before. What in the world is it, and what language is it? They're chanting, and I immediately turned off the CD player. That was a ritual. They were probably summoning up some spirit, some demon. He was playing it because he thought I'd like it because it was mellow and not this angry. Obviously, angry stuff. Well, actually, this thing was more deadly, or deadly in a different way. Yeah.
Deadly in a different way. Nonetheless, deadly, period.
Absolutely. By the way, one of the things I major on in the book is trying to have balance, because when you go down a road in the country, you can go off into a ditch on either side, you know, so we need to have balance about things. For instance, with the devil and demons, one way of going into a ditch is to deny that they exist, which there are a lot of Christians who do that. And the other is to focus on them too much. I'll give you a silly example of that. I'm overweight, and one time I was eating a candy bar, and this woman who claimed to have a deliverance ministry came up to me and tried to cast a spirit of chocolate out of me. Well, good grief, that kind of thing makes Christians look ridiculous, you know. I didn't have a demon of chocolate, I just had a sweet tooth.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
So, and the other thing is, we can be scared of the devil and think there's a demon behind every bush and forget, wait a minute, God's the creator, the devil's just a creature, he can squash him like a bug. Jesus said, if I by the finger of God cast out devils, the finger, it's like flicking a fly off your shoulder. It's not a wrestling match. I think the reason Michael the Archangel is the one that we see fighting Satan is because if the devil did it, Satan would be evaporated. I mean, and he serves a useful purpose here. God in the garden, the snake served a useful purpose, and the devil's doing it now. God is in the business of testing hearts. He wants to know if we really love him. What's our real priorities? And the only way you find that out is when you're under pressure.
That's right. You can pressure, I've found, will either crush you or turn you into a diamond.
Exactly.
I suppose, you know. So, you're precisely correct. But one thing that we've talked off air a couple of times, Maria, since Obama was placed into office back in 2008 to today, we have seen this open, overt, noticeable, palpable darkness that seems to have enveloped.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel it.
What is that? What are we looking at here? And that might sound like a stupid question, but I got to tell you, more and more people I've talked to said, "Look, I can feel the change. I can feel the change in the spirit. Things feel different. They look different. What's that about?"
Well, part of it is Obama. In Israel, when you had a king who was into the occult, who abandoned God and went into the occult, the whole nation suffered. The person who's in charge, it does have an impact, and Obama's an occultist. He's a Muslim, but he's also an occultist. He's a Muslim who pretends to be a Christian for political reasons, but he's also hardcore occult. Back in 2008, before the election, I read accounts that he went to Kenya. He went there as a senator on taxpayer money to help his cousin Raila Odinga run for president in Kenya. But while he was there, he went to the witch doctors and had them do occult rituals with him in order to get power to become president. That's hardcore occultism.
This stuff really happens, folks. And what you're saying, and just to be clear, you said, and I believe you, Maria.
I cannot document that, by the way. I can't find that online anymore. But
no, No, but there was, and I do recall something, and this was back. In fact, it might even. I might know where this could exist. But when right at the onset of his presidential aspirations, that was discussed. But let me ask you this: you called him an occultist, a Muslim, and
there's more to the occult than that with him. He had, and this was in the mainstream media in 2008 before he was elected.
Right.
He has a picture of Abraham Lincoln that talks to him. Now, pictures don't talk. So he's hearing from something. He's got a spirit guide. He's listening to a demon. Now, the other thing is, we know he's got these good luck charms in his pockets, including a Hindu monkey god. No good Muslim would carry a Hindu god in his pocket. So he's not even a good Muslim. But the other thing is Michelle, his wife, her mother lives with him to take care of the kids. The mother is into Santeria. That's basically the same as voodoo. It's slightly different, but it's the same kind of thing. And she had a voodoo priest or priestess come to the White House and do rituals there. And that was in the mainstream media. I saw that in 2008. So we're talking serious occultism there.
We're going to need more than a fire hose to clean up Washington, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and that's not the first time. When the Clintons were in there, Hillary had an occult mentor who came to the White House to summon up the spirit of Eleanor Roosevelt for Hillary to talk to.
I remember that.
Yeah, well, that would be a demon. But the other thing is, this occult mentor, New Age they called it. They didn't call her occult, they called her New Age. I did some research on her, and she's actually a witch. So that tells me Hillary's probably a witch, if this was her mentor. And here's another thing that I cannot document.
Go ahead.
But I've got a friend who's from Canada, and his church has missionaries down in Haiti. And those missionaries told the folks in their church that in 2008, Hillary went to Haiti and participated in voodoo rituals in order to get the power to become president, which could happen in 2016. Who knows? I mean, everything's up in the air. Everything's so crazy and surreal, it's like we're on another planet or another world. You know, it just isn't. I look around and I say, is this America? What country is this? What planet am I living on? Where did America go? You know?
Well, no, I know exactly what you're saying. And then, since you mentioned Hillary, I got to ask you this question because this has bothered me. And I've gotten quite a few emails about this. When I mentioned this back some time ago during the Benghazi, when Hillary appeared in her green outfit with, I think it was a green emerald type ring on her finger, and she just looked totally different. Some said that there was some, I don't know if witchcraft is the right word, but practicing, there were signs that she was or is in fact practicing witch. Does that fit anywhere in your research?
That doesn't fit in my research, but I heard something about that on your show, but it certainly fits the pattern. And the other thing is that Bill Schneblent's the guy, the former Satanist that I mentioned. By the way, he started out with Wicca, and then went from that to becoming a Satanist. And he first thought the whole progression that the devil didn't really exist. This is just about empowerment and so on and so on. So he went through that progression I mentioned until he got hardcore, and then he became a Christian. That's a miracle. I mean, to me that's bigger than God raising Lazarus from the dead. But anyway, I was talking to him on the phone. He said that he and his wife, as soon as Hillary came on the scene, they spotted her as a witch. And they ought to know because they were priest and priestess of a coven. So it takes one to know one.
Oh, yeah, it does. But, I mean, it would be easy to say that, but did they give you any specifics that would indicate what, for example, I mean, she doesn't wear a name tag with witch
you can
on
smell it. Look, if you were raised in a family with alcoholics, you can tell if someone's been drinking if it's only a tiny amount. Me, we didn't have that. For me, unless they're slurring their words or staggering around, I couldn't tell they've been drinking. Or if you can smell the breath, okay? But if you've lived with it, you can spot it right off. So they know it from the inside. They know the signs.
Okay.
It takes one to know one.
Yeah,
I just
very
take his
true.
word on that one. He's in a position to know.
Okay,
But that may be a moot point. I mean, there's so many that the stuff's so popular. I wouldn't be surprised if Nancy Pelosi was one. I mean, they teach it in public schools. There are some schools where they have, in classes, the teachers have taught the students how to do, these little kids, how to do practical witchcraft in the classes. In public schools.
You've documented that in your book, and I just find that so difficult to really comprehend that this is.
Well, that's their religion. They're trying to pass it on. Just like we tell people about our faith, they tell them about theirs. They think it's a good thing.
Incredible.
You know, calling good evil and calling evil good.
Well, of course.
Some of them are evil people that want to do terrible things, okay? A lot of them are not. They're just mixed up. They don't know what's right and wrong and what's good and evil. Let me give you a quote from Dr. Brock Chisholm, who's a psychiatrist. He was the first Secretary General of the United Nations World Health Organization, and he said this. Now, that means a lot of power and influence, okay? And he's a psychiatrist, so he influences a lot of psychiatry and psychologists. Back in 1946, he said, if the race is to be freed from its crippling burden of good and evil, it must be psychiatrists who take the original responsibility. So he wants a psychiatrist to get people to where they can't tell the difference between good and evil. Well, in American law, that's called being criminally insane. And actually, you could call that being a sociopath.
Right. Okay.
So their goal is to make it so that people are incapable of telling the difference between good and evil? Okay, listen to this one.
Or having the state the final arbiter of the good versus evil debate, I suppose. Yeah, having the state be your conscience. That's Hitler, and they're trying to do that right now. That was Hitler and Stalin both. They wanted to be your conscience, and they wanted to be your God. Listen to this quote from Thomas Sowell. He said, the techniques of brainwashing developed in totalitarian countries are routinely used in psychological conditioning programs imposed on American school children. These include emotional shock and desensitization, psychological isolation from sources of support, stripping away defenses, manipulative cross-examination of the individual's underlying moral values, and inducing acceptance of alternative values by psychological rather than rational means. So mind control, ultimately. Mind control. Brainwashing, mind control, right. And God bless Thomas Sowell. I love that man. He's a courageous man to speak out the way he does. He is, and we often quote from him as well in different things. So as we enter here into our final moments together, I mean, we're looking at a world that's upside down and backwards. We're looking at the perversion of the Holy Bible and the persecution of Christians in so many ways, and we're being blindsided. This is really the crux of your book, is to wake people up from being blindsided, to protect them from being blindsided. Now, I want to mention something. In the book, I'm part watchman and part nurse. Okay? Even in the rough part of it, I've got stuff in there to encourage people. Even at the end of the table of contents, I've got something in there, quotes from Scripture, to encourage people, because it's difficult dealing with this. It was very hard for me. So this is a good book to give people that aren't awake, because I tell the truth very clearly, but I do it in a low-key way. It's thoroughly documented, and I keep trying to encourage people and help them get the eternal perspective and have more confidence and trust in God.
all through it. So it's.
I like that. Yeah. And I like to compare it to, and a lot of people are familiar with, again, with Paul McGuire's book, Prophecy of the Future of America, where he gets into the occult section, the Satanist section, the persecution of Christians section. It's like getting hit with a 2x4 or a 4x4 across the head, where you're a little bit more, cagey about it or subtle.
No, the word is gentle.
Gentle, okay.
The word is gentle. I don't want to hurt the patient.
There you go.
I feel for them. I've had times when I was doing research when I went into physical shock, and I had to lie down and get in bed and pile on the covers and get a hot pad, and I was cold and weak, and it would take me an hour or two to recover. Then I'd get up and go back and keep on doing my research. So I know how hard it can be on people, so I'm trying to be as gentle and encouraging as I can. Now, there's stuff in here that will blow the minds of your very well-educated audience. I've got some new information for them that, they haven't seen that'll blow their minds. Well, like that quote from Brock Chisholm and the one from Thomas Sowell.
Right.
But, so for people that are wide awake, this is a very good book, but it's also a good book for people who aren't. It's kind of a one-of-a-kind thing there.
And I love the way you thread the needle so carefully. And the reason I mentioned Paul McGuire is because that's like a PhD. That's like, so you can give that book to someone, for example, they may not read that book, whereas your book, which spans, I think,
252 pages.
Okay, 252 pages. It's very digestible. So you can give this book to someone who is, if you are a Christian and you're a believer, you could read this book and not only be educated, but also earn that muscle memory retention protection, hedge of protection. But you can
and
also
it's
give this
easy
book
reading. I write in a way that's easy to read and easy to understand. For 4 years, I was a house mother for live-in house mother for mentally retarded adults. So I developed the habit of making things easy to understand. That was very good training for me. And since we have a lot of people that are not good readers anymore, well, that'll help them a lot. So I'm not talking down to people. I had 4 years of college. I had a scholarship at Barnard and so on. I've got some stuff, but I'm making it clear and easy. I always want to make it as easy as possible.
Again, that threading that needle very carefully, that's important to me, because as the clamps tighten upon us, upon the Christian venue, upon us Christians out in the open, this book may survive, for example, the scrutiny of a state agent, whereas others may not. This might survive only because of the method in which it's written. That's not to say it's watered down, but it's written in such a manner where people, folks, you can read this book, or you can give the book to someone and they could read this book and be almost, I want to say converted, without knowing that they were converted. It's a marvelous manuscript, or it's a marvelous book. The way you did this, I just can't say enough good about it.
Well, it might survive longer. Eventually, it would not, and I think the same goes for me. I had to face that when I published this. I expect that if I live that long, eventually I'll wind up in a re-education camp or prison or something or other. As a result of it, I had to be willing to do that in order to publish this.
Wow. Well, you got the floor for the next couple of minutes, Maria. What haven't we covered? What's the bottom line here? What do you want to cover that we haven't covered, whether it's specific or general? You got the floor.
I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to pray for you guys and the listeners, because God's the only one that can really get us through this. Oh, one little story. The way we need to be. Paul didn't say, I know what I believed. He said, I know whom I believed. His confidence was in a person, not in his understanding of how things were going to work out or how they should be. We have to have our confidence in the person of God. There's a story of a father and a little boy who were in a terrorist attack in the Middle East, and when all the noise screaming was over, He said, son, were you scared? He said, the little boy said, no, Daddy, you were holding my hand. And that's the way we need to be with the Lord.
Wow.
You know, that's the bottom line. Our understanding is limited. The best people we know and the best experts and the wisest people we know, it's all limited. We're all toddlers compared to God, or less. So we have to have our confidence be in who He is and the fact that He loves us. That's our bottom line. Then if things don't make sense, we can hang on and be faithful to Him no matter what. And that's what we've got to do. And that's what I want to pray for. Lord God, I ask for every person here listening and listens in the future, Lord, and the ones that they love, the Christians they love, Lord, that You give us the grace to be faithful to You no matter what happens, to love You and to trust You, and that when things get difficult, we will just press into You closer and cling to You harder and love You more and be willing to wait until we get to heaven to understand it. We're not going to understand it all now. There are a lot of things that won't make sense. We just need to hang on to You and go through the storm and trust You to get us through it, Lord. Please enable us to do that. Make us good, strong, faithful, loyal people who will be faithful to You and faithful to one another no matter what happens, in the name of Jesus.
Amen. Wow. Well, Maria, thank you so much for spending this time with us and talking about this book. You know what? I would be very proud to give this as a Christmas present, as a birthday present, or just to give it to someone, a family member, even if that person is a Bible-believing Christian, to wake them up, number one, and number two, to tell them how to deal with what's coming. And you've done a fantastic job writing this. You really have.
Well, thank you, and God bless you guys. I'm so grateful that you're out there. When I read the news, it helps me to know that you guys are out there.
Well, we appreciate that. God bless. Thank you so much for writing this book. And, folks, you'll be able to find it on our website. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. I want to say thank you very much for this book and the others you've written. They have been great reference books and big help spiritually at times. And for the listeners and from our family, we just want to say God bless you and keep up the good work.
God bless you, dear. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. That was Maria Knies, her book, Prepare for Persecution. Go to our website, HagmanandHagmann.com. You can find the links to the book there. And
not quite yet, but you will.
Not yet? Okay. It will be up there. It's a fantastic book, and as my dad says, it does cover a lot. It's written in a way that you talked about Paul McGuire's book. It does fill in the gaps of what his book gets into. With that, we're going to go to our top of the hour break. We'll be right back. Hour number 3, our final hour on this Friday, September 12th, 2014, on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're going to be taking your phone calls this hour at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. Before we go to the phone calls, you have an announcement to make first?
Yeah, folks, please. This Monday, mark this on your calendars or tell someone about this. Mark Flynn, the identical twin or the twin of David Flynn, the author, and you know him through Raiders News Update. Mark Flynn is going to be on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. He, of course, is the author of a new book. In fact, it's now going to it's going to be available here on the 16th. It's The Forbidden Secrets of the Labyrinth, okay, The Awakened Ones, The Hidden Destiny of America, and The Day After Tomorrow by Mark A. Flynn. And Tom Horn, Raiders News Update, Steve Quayle, they're using our radio show to springboard a massive, and I mean a massive, unbelievable package of books, DVDs, material, PDFs that will become available immediately after the show. In fact, go to Tom Horn's website, Raiders News update to take a look. But this Monday, Mark Flynn will be on to talk about this book. I've got to tell you, I have a copy of Mark Flynn's book. Again, I don't think it's out yet. I think it's coming out on the 15th or 16th, and it is just a fabulous read. I thought I knew what I thought I knew is only a smidgen of what I really know, and after reading Mark Flynn's book, I've got to tell you, I'm blown away. I mean, he gets into things like Mount Hermon, the dollar, the oracle at Delphi, the bull, the falling towers and the significance therein, the Islamic crescent moon, Samson. Folks, words can barely describe just the incredible writing style that he has. It was hard for me to put down even for 15 minutes. I've got pages upon pages upon pages of notes from this book, and I'm going to have to read this 2 and 3 different times because there's just so much information. And so Monday, a very special program, and I want to thank Steve Quayle publicly, and Tom Horn publicly, and Mark Flynn publicly for using our program as the springboard for this fantastic package at Raiders News Update. God bless you, folks. So Monday, tune in. It's going to be just a tremendous program with information that'll leave you agape. That's right. That's my word of the day, agape. That's my announcement, Joe.
All right. Let's go to the phones, and we're going to go to area code 260 first. 260, thanks for calling in. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 260.
Yeah, I'll take a large pizza with.
Did you hear in the background very faint, a person talking very faintly? Saying
I did.
Okay. 260, you're not coming through. If you want to call back, we'll take your call on the other side because we cannot hear you. So we're going to go to area code 267 next. 267, you're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind? 267? Maybe we're having a problem with our line.
Well, I just had a flash on our monitor. My monitor just winked out, as well as our monitor on the studio wall just winked out, so who knows?
Okay, 303. We're going to go to you. 303. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann.
Hi,
all right,
Joe.
We can hear you.
Okay, good deal. Hey, this is Bill from Colorado. You know, the Bill that sent the shofar off to brother Marcus, etc. I've called in a couple times. One of the out in Colorado. Actually, we had snow this morning, and it was 30 degrees when I got up. Yeah. So, welcome to the springtime in the Rockies. Fall in the Rockies. One of the things, your guest that you had, such a woman of wisdom. Her ability to talk about complicated issues in simple, understandable terms. That's the hallmark of wisdom. I just wanted to get that out there because she was just awesome. And
Bill, one thing she would never tell you. Let me tell you this. Okay, she spent so much time writing this book. I know the backstory on this. She went into debt writing this book, and she suffered health consequences writing this book. To make it so, the average person like me can actually understand this, make complicated subjects simple enough. Not only for my consumption, but to pass it along to others. You are very astute in noticing that. And I'll tell you something, a woman of, she is one to support. The book is a fantastic read. So thank you for pointing that out. I'll make sure that she does get that message.
Yeah. And just, precious soul. And another thing, one of the things two things God's been really leading me into is one of the things she talked about is holding on to God no matter what. And secondly, every bit of information that I get, the only truth that I have is the book sitting next to me over here, the Bible. And if it doesn't measure up next to the Bible, no matter what it is, whether it's the news, your friend talking to you, or whatever, if it doesn't match up to that, I throw it out.
Amen.
And, yeah. So, and at any rate, so God bless you both, and just keep on keeping on.
Bill, thank you so much, and thank you for all you've done for others and for the cause. Folks, you'll never know what Bill has done behind the scenes, a man of God, and thank you, Bill, for being part of our extended family of listeners. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you, and you too. Bye.
Have a great night, Bill.
You too, thanks.
I'm sorry. All right, I'm going to try and go back to 260. 260, we're coming back to you. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Still nothing. All right,
make 2 pizzas with double cheese.
All right, area code 919. You're up next. 919, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello, Hagmann. How are you guys doing? This is Teresa. I haven't talked to you in a long time.
Teresa, the voice is familiar. I recognize the voice.
Yeah, I'm in Carolina. I'm a Carolina girl.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
How you dudes doing? Listen, I got to tell you something. You've had some great guests on. It's the shows are marvelous. The inspiration is tremendous. The blessings are bountiful. But I do feel led at this point to tell you guys something.
We're going to get spanked, aren't we?
No, you're not. No, not tonight. Not tonight. Not tonight. This is good. This is good. Good. God is good. Jesus Almighty in heaven, raise us up, bless us, anoint us with your oil in his holy name. Listen, I understand what Job and Paul went through, their afflictions. 10 years ago, I was infected in my lab. I'm a cancer researcher. Been, in the, all that crap. But anyway, I was infected with 4 viruses, okay? This was supposed to be animal research only. Human tissue came through, supposed to be supposedly normal, not normal. So I always believed in protecting my technicians, so I was the front line. Now, let me tell you people something. What's coming down the pipeline is just, it's a plague. It truly is. I live with 4 right now. Let me explain to you. I have hepatitis C. I have herpes simplex. I have what you call HIV, HSVHS, which is Kaposi sarcoma. Now, I am active currently with Hep C and herpes. But there's a question now of cancer or HIV. And, and if that happens, well then, okay, the Kaposi sarcoma will come into play. But listen, let me tell you something. Even with all this, I'm not worried. Because you know who is guiding me, who is leading me? It's God Almighty. Jesus has his hands in everything I think, everything I do. We speak to each other like we're good friends, and that's the way you have to live. This Ebola, I've been following it since 1976. It really started out in the Congo, man, in the jungle. And that was some shit because, excuse my language, I'm sorry. But anyway, it transferred over from monkeys to humans at that time. Now, where genetically it's gone from this at this point, because it's you're looking at RNases, okay, not DNA. Now, these viruses do not require oxygen to replicate, okay? So, all right, you've got, these things are mutating like crazy. Tonight, I think it was on Brother Wiles, Rick Wiles, on True News. He's changing over his radio program to from doing the news to just inspiration. And I tell you, man, between you and him, if people don't get the word, they deaf, dumb, and blind. And,
we love him. I just want to, on the record, he's a very good friend of ours, and we support him. I mean, man. We support him. So
he is tremendous, is he not? And he's changing his ministry over at this point, and we need to really pray for that. But I'm telling you something. This stuff, Ebola, it's just like the doctor that you had on the other night with Steve. This stuff has a 90% kill ratio. Don't let nobody fool you. Okay, one of the things that have really plagued my mind and my heart, okay, what does herpes, Kaposi sarcoma, and HIV and Ebola have in common? They have these ulcerating, blistering lesions that fester, ooze, and stench to the high heavens. Okay, now, has anybody ever gone in and done like PCRs, Western blots, checked out any similarities? And again, another thing that plagued on my heart, the researcher that went down in the Ukraine, he was a very prominent virologist, and he also lost his resident at that point. And I'm sure all the papers are scattered across Europe, who knows. But, information like that, it was like that other plane that went down, man, and they couldn't find it, like it's somewhere in the Indian Ocean. I forget, 713. And, those were carrying technicians, that were doing some kind of funky work somewhere, real sensitive stuff. So, this stuff is like you've always said, if you connect the dots and if you've got half a brain, this stuff hits home hard and fast. I kind of look at like this cancer scare as like, man, like what I've got on my back right now is like cancer is like a joke to me. But, hey, I live in the Word. I speak the Word. I tell everybody I know. I even had something really weird happen to me the other day that I really am having such a hard time, and I've tried to get up with Pastor Langford, but I just don't have the answer to it yet, and the Lord won't answer me on it, so I'm not doing nothing. When He don't tell you to do something, don't do nothing. Just wait. And but anyway, I had someone approach me to minister to Islam, Muslims in the universities. And right now, at this point, I feel like we are at a point where lines have been drawn, like, you know what you are, you know who you are and who you stand for. And, I don't think, I pray that conversions will happen with all my heart. But this is the question that I have, and because these people, these jihadists are so fanatical, they're crazy with madness and insanity and hatred and for anything that's righteous and good. And, it's the same old battle that's been going on, that God has been fighting for since Adam. So, take heed. And what the Lord is leading me to say to you, everyone tonight, trust in me, trust in Jesus, live in His Word, and have faith, and never, never lose hope. Never lose hope. And when you get sick, and when you're vomiting your head off, and when you're so sick you can't pray, rebuke it in the name of Jesus Christ as you stand, or as you're falling, leaning into a garbage can, puking your head off. Pray in His name. Praise Him. Raise Him up. Jesus, in the name, I love you. I love you. I praise you. God in heaven, to anoint me now. Take this away from me. And let the Word of God live in you. The remnant that is out there. Oh, and one thing that I found out about these churches, these people that wanted me to minister to these Islamic people, Muslim people, Islam, Muslim. But anyway, the isms. Chihuahua. Man, oh man. I just had brain fart, excuse me.
Well,
brain fart.
That's all right. I mean, we can forgive you. I mean, you're right now, if I understand this correctly, I mean, you're infected with 4 potentially terminal diseases, including...
And God is holding me up. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
God is walking with me day by day, holding me up. I should be dead. I am the most healthiest, semi-healthy. But, man, I'm telling you, God is good. God is great. Obama, these demons from hell that we see every day cannot touch us. Don't you see? Don't you see? And when Ebola comes, man, I even got a little taste of SARS because, man, when somebody came into the lab that had been to China, and, man, they had been exposed on the airplane to the SARS crap. I even had a little taste of that, and that crap is really bad. But can you imagine what my genetic makeup is now? I might be the only person walking on the face of the earth that's alive, man, and I don't want that to happen. Because if anybody's left, they're going to be hearing about Jesus. So,
Well, I got to ask you if you dress in the morning in a biohazard suit.
No, sir. I dress just like a normal person, and I love the Lord, and I'm a happy soul, man. I'm learning how to play the guitar after 30 years, and I'm painting again and reading again, and God has put so many wonderful people in my life, and, I'm learning Spanish, I'm learning Romania, I know French, so these languages, I've studied Hebrew for 10 years. God bless the Israeli people. Anybody in Israel, shalom, shalom, listen to me. God has His hands on you. Never forget. Never. Jeez. Man, have faith.
Well, it's wonderful. It's wonderful that you are truly an inspiration to all of us, and I want to thank you so much.
Well, crap happens, but let me tell you something. Don't be scared. Well, yeah, but, hey, listen, I'm alive. I'm well. I got this little thing with this cancer scare, and God told me, He said, okay, sister, there's something in that lung. It's going to come out. We're going to take it out. It's going to cause a little problems. But after that, you're going to get up. You're going to walk in my name. You're going to be walking the very next day. You'll have some of that lung. You got a good one next left. Hey, as long as I got life and breath in me, the words be passed and pass it on. And don't be scared of Ebola. Don't be scared of none of this crap. I'm telling you, walk in the Word, have faith, have love, and listen, reach out to people. Man, you got brothers and sisters out there. People in the United States are suffering bad. I see it every day on the street, man. I'm out there giving food. I'm out there feeding and anything you got in your house that you don't need, man, give it to a family that's in need. Pass it on. You don't never know what somebody might need, okay? And think of that and stock up, because crap is going to hit the fan real soon. And remember this: you're going to need some cornmeal too, and your powdered milk, and anything that basically that's got some stuff you can perishable, stuff in the grocery store 6 months to a year, okay? Right. But other stuff, man, anything over that, when the crap really hits the fan, you're going to have the freeze dried and stock up and water. Water, 3 days. You need water. You'll die without water in 3 days. You can survive 2 weeks, man. I can survive. If I can survive, and now my bones are getting skinny, I'm getting like Brother Paul. I could float on air. But listen here, let me tell you something. I got wings on my feet. I know from whence I come. So listen, don't let Obama feather your feathers and raffle you raffles or nothing else. And listen, the other night when that old Katy Perry was over there singing her little, whatever she does, her jig, she was over there doing her jig. Jesus told me, I'm an intercessor too. He said, drop to your knees, sister. I dropped to my knees, and he said, pray for Obama. Pray against him right now. And I started praying against him, and then about a day later I heard from Brother Wiles that he got terribly sick. And I heard that a lot of people were praying against him because the intercessors were called together to pray against him. And the brother got sick and had to go in the side room, and they had to do some hocus pocus and get it back on his feet so he could get out there and dance his little jig, you know what I mean? So anyway, hey, y'all keep strong and keep that smile going, brother. And you're in my prayers, and I love you both. And stay in the Word, walk in the Word, and keep the Word in your heart. Keep Jesus in your heart. God bless. Let me say a prayer. Let me say a prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. For amen and amen. Brother, I love you, and amen. I love all you people. Be cool and keep the faith going, okay? I love you.
Thank you so much for the call. God bless you. God bless you. Thank you so much. And Joe, imagine that. 4 potentially terminal diseases. It's like she jumped on a Petri dish hand grenade at the lab. Seriously.
I was just listening to her and the energy and the dedication and devotion she has with. I just can't imagine. I know how hard it is to do some things sometimes when you have a stomachache or a headache.
Yeah. I mean, we walk around and Coach Dobmar says, are you hurt or are you injured? And there's a big difference. But one thing that caught my attention that she did say is that Ebola, it is a big deal. I mean, a pandemic, the potential for a pandemic, it's a big deal. It is a big deal. It really is. But of course, it's surmountable with as we walk in the Word. But it's just interesting to me. How all of these events, as we opened up the program with the economic events, with the signs and the seals, or the signs, I should say, that we see, and then we had Maria Canise on preparing for persecution, the Christians preparing for persecution, and then this caller and the caller before that. I mean, all of this is tying up together. It might not seem that way, but if you re-listen to this broadcast, you'll see how things are tying up together. My goodness, it's just amazing.
All right, we're going to go to the next call. We're going to go to area code 936. 936, thanks for calling. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And there you go, 936.
936.
It's doing what it did earlier, put it back on hold. Hold on. 936, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Oh, come on.
I'm telling you, there's something not right with...
All right, we're going to try and take another call. 727. We're going to go to 727, then come back to 936. 727, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, am I on the air?
You are.
Yes, yeah.
I just want to thank you all. You know, I'm a 76-year-old widow. I have nobody to talk to, and all the information I get is from you all and Paul McGuire and Steve Quayle and all the great men of God and women that you have on, and I just appreciate you so much and telling me how to get ready for the end times. And like I said, my church is great, but it just won't, you know, nobody is telling this. And I love listening to y'all, and God bless you. I'm praying for you, and just keep up the good work, because I need you. Thanks.
Well,
bye.
We need you. God bless you. Thank you so much for the call. God bless you, dear. Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
And feel free to call anytime. I just want to say that. And thank you for making us a part of your life. We really appreciate that. That's the biggest honor that we could have.
All right, it's not letting me bring on this 936 number. I don't know what kind of shenanigans are going on. 936, are you there? I keep going back to the mute. All right, 208. 208, we're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, guys. It's really nice to talk to you this evening. I've been listening to you now for about a year, and I just wanted to say thank you for everything you do, all the fabulous speakers and that you have on the show. And I had sent you a note probably about a month ago, maybe a little less, about interviewing a guy by the name of John Jacob Schmidt from the American Readout. Do you remember receiving that?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I could tell you exactly where that note is right now. Yes, I saw it today.
Did you get a chance yet about maybe doing because I did send him an email about maybe doing some kind of an interview with him.
Well, what I was going to handle this a little bit differently. I don't want to say on air how, but yes, that is a part of. That's within our reach to do, and we are planning on doing something. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a ham radio operator, and I work with emergency communications a lot. And the AMRON networking system, amateur radio communications people are just so professional. I cannot believe, I can't say enough about John Jacob and his radio abilities and just his mentoring and support and everything that he's done. But between the American Readout and the AMRON emergency communications program, it's really spreading in this area. I'm from Southwest Idaho, and it's really spreading like wildfire. Plus, it's national now since they've hooked up with Tapran, which is back east. I don't know. You're back east, so maybe you might be familiar with Tapran. But anyway, I'm looking forward to maybe hearing him on your show, because he's been on He's been on the Survival Summit and the Summer of Survival with that Chet Womatch, I think. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. But anyway, just keep on keeping on, guys. You just are so edifying, spiritually. One of the things I really appreciate about your show is you're not just a show talking about everything, that's going on in the world and all the false information that's coming through, but the spiritual side that between Steve and Pastor Langford and everybody, we just need that so much nowadays to be able to stand through all of this, and to be a testimony and reach out to others and get them saved, get them in the door before it's too late. So just thanks for everything, and that's all I wanted to say.
And I'll say this, thank you for doing your part in preparing people as well. And I think you know what I mean when I say that. Thank you for doing your part and preparing others, preparing the infrastructure for when things do go down. We need to have that. Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless you guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye. We're going to go to area code 310 next. 310, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann report. 310.
Is this the Hagmann? Is this the Hagmann?
Yes, it is.
Oh my gosh. I did not expect ever in the world to get a hold of you two. Oh my gosh, the Hagmann heroes. You guys are awesome.
Well, you're the heroes. We're just the Hagmans, so that's okay. So what's up?
You know, I'm in LA, and I've been listening to you guys for the last 3 years, and you know, I'm a nurse. I'm in the Air Force. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. And I'm listening to everything that's going on in the world. And I'm listening to my Pastor Bagley and you guys and all the voices out there that are really, really strong for the Lord. And I am just thanking you guys because the men of God are rising up and many more. And you guys are, you know, wherever God leads you, whatever you guys decide to do, just keep going with it, you know, trust and obey, and we're praying for you. And that's all I want to say.
Are we making a difference, do you think?
Oh, my gosh. You know what? There's a lot of silent voices out there. You know, I wasn't even going to call. I have never called. I've been wanting to call for 3 years, and I've never called. I've been listening to you guys for a long time. My daughter's doing violin lessons, and I'm listening to you at night. There's a lot of silent voices. You are making a difference. Don't give up. Please don't.
Okay.
We love you guys.
Well,
thank you so much.
We love you too, and one of these days have your daughter come on and play the violin for us. Play a little bit of violin.
She's gone to the guitar since then, but anyways, we just love you, and please, you know what? You know, there's a lot of silent voices just aren't talking, but we love you. And for some reason, God wanted me to say this to you because I'm sitting here washing my face, getting ready for bed, and He wanted me to say this to you. You are making a difference.
Thank you.
So love you guys, praying for you, and just keep it up.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
God bless you guys. Good night.
You too. Good night.
Have a great night.
Yeah, but believe me, we're just the Hagmans. You folks listening are the heroes. That's the way it works. Period.
Yeah, and then the closing moments of the show here. Two things. One announcement we gave earlier, Steve Quayle and Mark Flynn will be on with us on Monday. We also have, don't forget, tomorrow night, Sheila Zelinsky, the Weekend Vigilante, will be live from 8 to 11 p.m. And then I checked Stan's website. He will be back with us next Tuesday in the second hour. He has it up there on his website.
Terrific.
So we've been without Stan for the last 2 weeks, but he will be back on Tuesday in the second hour. Whatever he had going on, he is completed, and he's got a number of interviews. He's going to be on John B. Wells' Caravan to Midnight. He was on that September 9th. Also on Coast to Coast this week. So he's back doing the interviews.
Back in action.
Yeah.
Back in the trenches. This is good stuff. This is really good stuff. And I'll tell you this. I just want to reiterate tonight very quickly for you folks. Our second hour guest was Maria Canese. Her book, Prepare for Persecution, Perilous Times and Biblical Comfort. Folks, I really did get a lot out of this book. It's kind of in two parts. The first, it awakens people. The second part, it tells you how to prepare. I highly recommend it. It's available on Amazon. I will, in fact, put up a link on Hagmann and Hagmann, a prominent link for this book. Please, do yourself a favor. It's a great book. It's written very well. And it'll help you. It'll help your neighbor, your sister, your brother, your children, your parents, whoever. I endorse this book heavily. Joe endorses it. I know. Do you endorse it? Yeah, I'm not going to speak for you.
Yeah, of course I endorse it. I recommend it. Yeah, this is a must-have for your library.
Okay. Good. But we need to be prepared for what's coming, and what's coming is going to be a tsunami, and we need to recognize when that wave goes out, and people are running out to that extended shoreline, grabbing the trinkets and goodies and all of that, and the animals are fleeing up toward the top of the mountain. Don't be one of those people looking for trinkets in the sand, in the wet sand. Understand what's coming so you don't get swept away.
Absolutely. With that, it's been a fantastic week. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for tuning in, and for the callers, the people who have sent us emails, and who are out there listening that we haven't heard from. God bless all of you. We love you. Thank you so much for your support. We will be back tomorrow night with Sheila Zielinski, and then our full week we'll have tomorrow. I'm sure we'll have more guests lined up for next week. But until then, God bless. Stay safe. We will see you tomorrow night.